a lot of these empires throughout history, when you look at them, they come and they go. We don't see a Mongol empire anymore, right? The Chinese, those dynasties have come and gone. Um, was it just inevitable that the Romans would have fallen, or was there a way for them to have saved themselves?
Well, I think the problem is you see in the 280s, as I mentioned, you have Diocletian that tries to reform things a bit, but what he actually ends up doing is creating a model for medieval kingship. He tries to reform money, he tries to handle how the army is put together, and he basically tries to break the empire up into what's called dioceses. That's what a lot of the Catholic Church borrows a lot of these terms after the fall of the West. So I think the problem is if we handled the US by the 10th Amendment and actually let states handle a lot of what they should handle, like that could handle part of it because part of the problem is the empire got too big, so it's too big for one person to manage. So I think that is one thing that could be okay, but we've gone so much to federalism, it kind of puts us in an issue. But the bigger problems are number one, the currency. If we do not get a handle on what we're doing with our money, and I don't, once again, I'm not an expert on currency, so I don't know if would a gold standard be good or are we too far over our skis? Do we need to do
Hmm.
something more digital? I don't know. That kind of scares me as well because they would know everything that you spend money on. But we do need something behind our money because we can't go like this forever. And I think the other part about it is too, by 476, when the Western Empire fell, there were very few people that were actually Romans anymore because it had gradually become a barbarian kingdom. Now, I'm not
Mm.
saying that we shouldn't have immigration. I'm not saying that it's not, my family wasn't born here, right? Like, well, I was born here, but I'm saying like we came here from other
Right,
countries. The
right.
point I'm making though is the people in the system have to have buy into the system. And unless you have borders, you're in a real problem. Like we have a proper
Hmm.
immigration process and people should use it. So unless we're going to handle that and unless we're going to handle our currency, we are in real trouble because you look at even what's been happening in New York. I think I saw an article this morning. It was like $5 billion have been spent on social programs from people that didn't pay taxes. They just came here. So I think it is a real issue of handling your currency and handling your borders, or you're going to see exactly what happened to the Western Empire.
So with the Romans, what was it exactly again that they did with their currency? They devalued it
They
by
debased it. So what they
they
would do is
debased it.
they would add they would typically mint new coins every year, and they would take coins in circulation, bring them back, and then reprint them, so we can actually tell when they were printed by what they're stamped with. But they would add other metals to them. So they would gradually add like things that were less valuable, like copper and aluminum and tin. So eventually you get to the point where this coin that was a silver coin by the 270s, there's no silver left in it. And that's the problem you
Mhm.
get to where people don't trust that coin. So they don't want that coin. They either want a lot more coins or they trade in the black market. Like black market trade by the 280s AD is huge because people don't want to deal in the money they're being given because it has no value anymore.
Okay. And then when it comes to the border issue with the Roman Empire, what was it that they failed at with that?
Well, there's two different things, and the first comes from corruption. Well, I guess if you can go further back, there's a plague in the 160s AD that kills about 10% of the empire. So the military's been kind of beat up a bit. So they start bringing barbarians into the Roman Empire to give them, to basically have more soldiers. But then in 212 AD, Emperor Caracalla has kind of bankrupted the Roman Empire. He needs more money. So how is he going to do that? He grants citizenship to 30 million people to be able to now tax
Mhm.
their inheritance. So you have this major issue now of 30 million people now have Roman citizenship. Now, this was citizenship without the vote. There's other Romans that have citizenship with the vote. You could do a whole episode on different types of Roman citizenship, but he grants them citizenship so he can tax them. So now you're watering down what does it mean to be a citizen. And then as these emperors are raising armies to attack each other, well, they don't have enough Romans to fight each other, so they're bringing in barbarians to fight for them. And what eventually happens is it's barbarian commanders that fought under the Romans that organized themselves to then start sacking Rome in 410. So it
Mhm.
becomes a solution that eventually becomes the problem.
Well, that sounds really similar to what we're dealing with here in a variety of ways. I would say with the military, just looking at bringing in the barbarians and them then starting to fight, using using their training and weapons against the very people who gave it to them. We've seen that over and over in the Middle East. I mean,
Yes.
we keep giving weapons to moderates, right? That's what they say. Well, we're just funding the moderate. Well, hell, we're training the moderate. I mean, how did Osama bin Laden and Al Qaeda form? It was us training and arming the Mujahideen in Afghanistan in the 70s and 80s. And that didn't turn around and bite us in the ass. Same thing with I mean, we're seeing that over and over where we keep giving weapons. I mean, that's to me one of the biggest issues I've got with the military, besides the expansion. I actually am, I'm more okay with the expansion and the bases all around the world than I am with us giving weapons to foreign countries. I am just that you cannot maintain sovereignty and give your weaponry and your sophisticated tech and all of these to you call them allies. An allied, that's not your country. They could turn on
It's
you
even
any
an
minute like
ally
the
for
barbarians.
I was just gonna say an ally for how long, right? Like, I think that's a big
Right,
part of it is if, you look at what happened in Afghanistan, we pull out and now we've left helicopters and everything there you could
right,
imagine that they can either sell in the black market, which is one part of it, or use against us one day. So I think that is a major problem, but that goes back to who's profiting off of this. And I think that's often what you have to look at in the fall of empires. When the
right.
people of a country or the people of an empire or a nation stop profiting off of what the empire or the nation does, and it's military contractors or it's only the rich and powerful, well, that's how things fall, and that's what we're headed
Right.
towards.
Oh yeah, the military contractors love nothing more than for us to sell weapons to Saudi Arabia or to Israel or to, I mean, even foreign countries. We say, oh, Germany, Japan. Okay, well, not that long ago, they weren't allies of this country, and those allegiances can change, and it's up to them, not up to us. They can change their alliances to fit to suit their own country, as they should if it's more beneficial for their country, right? Because that's what you do as a sovereign nation. So we can't trust a single ally. We can't trust the Brits. We can't trust the Canadian. I mean, we shouldn't be trusting anybody but ourselves. And that is why I have such a problem with us selling arms to everybody around the world and then just claiming, oh, but they're our allies. And then, but tomorrow they don't have to be.
Hmm.
They don't have to be. And that is going to be a massive, massive problem. But it sounds like that was similar to what the Romans did, was just
Yeah.
this, oh, we got these allies. And no, they're protecting us. It's like the NATO alliance. I mean, it's like, oh, really? I mean, you can make some kind of agreements with other countries. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but you can't really rely on that or trust that.
Well, yeah,
You
you
can
have
only trust yourself.
in 410 AD is kind of like the beginning of the end for the Roman Empire. It only lasted there like almost 60 years after that point. But you have this barbarian commander, Alaric, that actually organizes the Visigoths and they attack the city of Rome. And then after 410, they're paid money or tribute every single year by the Roman emperor. But before that, Alaric was one of the top Roman commanders. So that's what ends up happening is your allegiance is to whoever pays you money at that point in time. And I think that
Yeah.
is a big problem.
Yeah, yeah. And then when it comes to immigration, we're seeing this particularly in the West. We're not actually, as much as people are freaking out about immigration here in the United States, we're not seeing this one particular aspect that kind of, to me, sounds very similar to the Roman Empire. Is that like Germany, for example? The way I believe that they're a country whose GDP per capita is actually declining, and the only way that they were able to boost it was by bringing in the million Syrian immigrants. And so when you look at the GDP per capita, countries that were actually in decline start to increase because they bring in people from outside, but it's phony. It's not a real true GDP increase. It's on paper. It allows governments to say, "Look, we're doing great. We're fantastic." We are seeing that somewhat here in the United States, but we weren't seeing enough of a GDP decline per capita in order for this to really be stark like it is in certain countries. But they're seeing it. They're bringing in these people, and then they're saying, "Oh, we're the government." Then it's just a total facade and a sham. And they're saying, "No, we're a healthy, happy. We're a healthy country. Our GDP is great." And in reality, it's because they had to import the people in, and they're using them in the calculation. So it sounds like it's a similar. Once you start having that, and that's as an issue that many countries have to figure out how to solve without importing people in that are not going to be productive. I'm fine with bringing in productive people. If you
Right.
bring them in and they're productive and they're truly contributing to the GDP, that's one thing. But if it's just a sham and they're actually sucking resources from you more than they are actually adding to the resources, that's why I don't freak out as much about like when they go to the border and they say it's all these men, they're like
Yeah,
military
I don't know
age,
how
and they're
much of that I believe. Like, I feel like it's people often report that based on what serves them, but I do think there's a lot of families coming across. I know, like, I'm not far from New York City, and the Roosevelt Hotel is one of the main places where they're having migrants go, and there's
yeah,
people with strollers and stuff out front. Like,
right,
it is a
right.
lot of families coming across.
But it's probably, I mean, I do think from the videos and that I've seen that it is a lot of working aged men. Okay, well, that means they're coming to be productive. So what we have to do is then prevent them from taking that money and sending it away, right? We've got
Yes,
to put a control on that. Like, you're welcome to come in and be productive and add to our GDP and contribute to our society and build our society, but you've got to be here to build ours. You can't then take the money and then ship it away, because that's only going to then we're being an empire used, and then they're sucking the resources out, and that would then, and then what do we do? Then we have money all around. We have to print money in order to serve for the citizens who are here to survive, and then you end up with the issues that sounds like caused the collapse of the Roman Empire. So it sounds
well,
like
and that
with
goes back to like what I
immigration.
was. That goes back to like what I was saying. Like, when the money is what the system is based on. As the money
Yeah,
loses value, and the only reason that people have buy into the system is for the money because they're maybe they don't have buy into that system. But when the money's gone or doesn't have any value anymore, well, they don't need that system anymore. I think that's what you're
right,
racing towards.
right. Well, 75 years. So it is, maybe if we don't turn it around. And there are people that are trying to turn it around. Of course, when it comes to talking about the money and wanting to go back to a gold standard, that's considered fringe and conspiracy. And like you said, and I don't know either if that's the best solution. But it does sound like we have to get a hold of, for sure, we got to get a hold of inflation and money printing, although they're
Yes,
just kind of moving us towards systems where they're doing more money printing, like CBDCs. They want to get us to a system that's worse, not better, which is why I don't really have any hope that we're going to
terrifying.
turn this ship around, just like the Romans didn't, obviously. And I don't think we will, because they're not coming up with viable solutions that do turn that ship around. They're instead coming up with solutions that almost accelerate the ship.
Yes,
Um,
that's the scary part.
yeah, but good lessons to learn. Jeremy, thank you so much for being here and sharing with us these lessons. Um, Not that anybody's going to do anything about it.
That's the
But
scare and that is the part that I like, I have 3 young daughters, so I'm very hopeful that we can, like, turn the ship around, but at the same time, the problem is the people that we were relying on to turn the ship around are making way too much money off of it, and I think that's the problem.
yeah. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's not like Rome is a bad place right now. You know, they're not the center of the world. All roads don't no longer lead to Rome, but Italy's a wonderful place, a successful place that people are happy and healthy. And so there's hope after empire, right? I mean, I think that is what we see, even with the British Empire and now it's America. There's hope after empire. So I don't know if we should be too terribly afraid of the collapse. It sounds like in a lot of ways the collapse leads to a slightly different system, but not necessarily a bad system. And maybe there's actually more focus on the citizens themselves rather than this kind of grab, power grab and money grab.
But
Maybe.
I think part of it is, though, like, if that's the case, then we have to bring more of our production back here. We have to do
Yeah.
something about trade tariffs, and we have to do something about our currency, because part of the problem is we're able to live like we live and with a high standard of living because of our currency. And if that happens, our currency isn't going to have the value it has. So we do have to do something about that. Not that I think it's a bad thing to go into something different.
Yeah. All right, Jared. So we ended on a positive, at least. It's not terrible for the end of the empire. We just have to make sure we do it in a way that doesn't cause collapse and mayhem and civil wars and violence and drama, right? If we could do it in a way that actually was productive and smart, then it's not a terrible thing in the end. But Jeremy, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Hey, Kim, thank you so much for having me.
And tell people where they can find you. I do have all the links down below, but you go ahead
Yeah.
and tell you've got so much. You're a man of many trades,
Yeah,
many talents, trades, and
I used to be a competitive powerlifter in my 20s too, but so if you want to check, so I run a company called Command Your Brand, and we help to facilitate conversations like this, because I do think free speech is the number one thing we have right now. So you can check us out over at commandyourbrand.com, or I am at Jeremy Ryan Slate on all platforms. Not because I'm egotistical and care too much about my own name, but because my parents named me after a cowboy actor, so I had to get found.
Jeremy, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks again.
Hey guys, this was just a clip of a longer show. Catch the full show by going to KimIversonShow.com. It is free. It airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. You could go back now and watch this full interview. I highly recommend it. Again, go to KimIversonShow.com. Thank you so much for watching.